All right, we're live. JC, what's going on?
Hey, what's up? We're live. Welcome, everybody.
All right, JC. So we were chatting. Was it you were here about a month ago at the last speaker series, and we
Yep.
did it on asset management, property management. And so, just to kick it off, maybe give people a little bit of your background, and then what your firm does, and then we'll jump into. I think you put together a pretty good deck here on just sort of top things that asset managers should be looking at and tracking, and then we'll get some comments from people who are joining us live with any questions, and I'll try to chime in with some questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot, James, for having me. And first and foremost, welcome everybody out there to this live stream. My name is JC Castillo. I'm the president and CEO of Velo Residential. We are a fee management property management company in Dallas Fort Worth, and really my main mission these days is to help owners operate for way more profit and with less stress, and also to give our residents a living experience that they love. And the thing about it, James, is that I've been about 15 years in multifamily. I've done it all. I've been an owner, an operator, repositioner, developer, and also now more importantly, opening up a third-party fee management company, and also opened up my own management company along the way. And the biggest thing that I have learned along the way is that operating for profit is really a very important skill set that a lot of owners these days have got a lot more focus on. And so we are in the business of helping owners to better operate their properties and increase their operating profits with our management company, Velo Residential.
All right, so let me pull open the deck and let's just go through a couple of these slides here, and then so let me know if you can see that.
Sure can.
Okay, all right. So let's just jump in here, and I'll try to make this a little bit smaller so you can see this. Sometimes when I make it full screen, I can't see anything on my screen. So
Yeah,
let's just go with that.
let's
All
do
right.
it.
So let's just start with the first slide and go from here.
Yeah, I think the simple message here is, the business conditions for being an operator have seemingly changed overnight. Everybody knows that interest rates have spiked, and everybody knows that it kind of caused us to hit a brick wall in terms of a lot of things that were happening maybe a year ago that are struggling to happen now. So you've got a situation where you've got properties with floating rate loans. You've got properties with expenses that are going up like crazy with inflation. And then you've also got, to top it off, 2021, we sort of had that boost in rental growth. And we in 2022 sort of saw a little bit of it too. And now we're sort of peeling back down to what I would call historical rates for rental growth. So, you have this basically this ever decreasing and smaller target for you to hit your performance requirements, right? Because you got expenses going up from one side, you got income coming back down, and then on top of that, you got interest rates, crushing you on your loan. And so all that is making us change operating conditions from what I would say to be a flip for equity decade that we had, maybe the golden age of multifamily, some people say, to really sort of this really big focus on, hey, how am I going to operate for profit? How am I going to squeeze the maximum amount of juice out of that lemon right now? Because that's going to be the difference between me making it over to the other side of this, speed bump in the road, or not. And so, really asset management and property management are sort of become center stage almost overnight. And that's a really big change that we haven't seen in a very, very long time.
Well, Sean Griffith has got the popcorn ready. He is ready to go. So,
I love it.
Sean,
What's
thanks
up,
for
Sean?
jumping on. Feel free to jump in with any comments as we go through this. All right. So, yeah, I mean, essentially, if you bought a deal in, let's say, 16, 17, 18, and then you sold it 3 or 4 years later, and your cap rate went from a 6% or 7% all the way down to 4 or 5%, it pretty much didn't matter. You made a ton of money, and it didn't matter if your NOI went up or anything, right? So, but now if cap rates are flat or even up a little bit, it's going to take some NOI growth to really drive the value
That's
on
right.
that. So,
That's right. And
all
I've
right.
got a great story, and I'm always talking to a lot of different owners out there. A great story that I heard from someone who was talking to me about the situation right now is he said, "Hey, look, here's the bottom line. I'm invested passively in 12 deals right now. Okay, 12 deals. And every single one of those deals, I'm in with a sponsor that has doubled my money in a previous investment. Every single one of those 12 deals he's in, the sponsor had a previous track record of doubling his money. And he told me, he goes, JC, guess how many of those LP deals I'm in now are paying me any distributions right now today? Guess what? It's 1 out of 12. 1 out of 12 is paying him distributions. All the other guys, all the other sponsors are not putting distributions out there right now. So that just gives you a feel for, these guys had the track records in the past, but the market conditions have changed so fast that it didn't matter what your track record was. These are really, really tough times.
Okay. All right. So a lot of pressure, not only, well, I guess I'm not sure. I'm I, I'm not as mechanically minded as you potentially, but I quit engineering after 1 year, so
Yeah.
I see the pressure gauge on this thing, and they're under, I would say, a lot of pressure just from a, not only an interest rate, like you showed here, the interest rate piece, but then also from a timing piece, right? So a lot of stuff purchased in 21, 22, they had either a 2 year or 3 year bridge, and that has increased the pressure because now it's like I got to make something happen really quick. And
Yep.
so let's go to the next slide here.
Yeah,
And
I think James, you know this better than most people, and you are very well educated on what's happening in the market right now. But look, the reality of where we're at is, it's kind of like if you think back to the Silicon Valley Bank, and that
sure.
was sort of like sort of the first domino that kind of popped out of nowhere on the banking side. I feel like we just had that issue, or that sort of first domino to fall, with a couple of big announcements on the foreclosure side. One guy in Houston who a lot of people know went out of business and lost, between 70 to 80 million dollars of investor capital, and had a $230 million foreclosure. And then there's actually another a big operator, the biggest operator in San Francisco. A lot of people out in the Sun Belt don't know about this, but if you track national headlines, Veritas is currently in default on about $450 million of CMBS loans. That is a big deal. And these are sort of like the two, I think, first, canaries in the coal mine, if you will, that are showing you that executional missteps and inefficiencies, not only can they actually put a damper on your profits right now, but they can actually put you out of business. So I think that the real key here is, we're not just talking about operate for profit anymore for the sake of making a couple of extra dollars. We're actually talking about operating for profit could be the difference between you making it and not making it to the other side. So, this is really, I would say, a very important time for us to be paying attention to how we're managing these bottom lines at these properties.
Yeah, and I mean, like I talked to an operator this morning, and I think they had to change management companies maybe 2 or 3 times just in the last 2 years. So it's a challenge because when you're going to either sell or refi, your financials from one management company to the next management company to the next management company, it's just hard to keep track of, and it's hard for a new buyer or even a lender to underwrite. So not only, and then they're saying that every time they change management companies, all of a sudden a lot of bills came up. So a lot of bills
Yeah,
that hadn't
yeah.
been paid. So I think that's just gonna compound over time. So okay, so uh I think I heard survive to 1995 in an article. It was, so there was an old school attorney, I think, that he was just starting the business, and it was sort of early 90s, and he was hearing around the water cooler survived to 1995 because all the savings and loans crisis. and
Yep.
then and then I sort of started saying survive to 2025. I don't know if that was like at NMHC in like January or something like that, but Yeah, that seems, I don't know if it's a rallying cry. It's more just like we're looking for optimistic times, because if we are going to have, recession or any type of downturn, then, we're thinking it's going to be better 2 years from now. So,
Well,
but
I
yeah.
really think that, survive to 25 is an interesting way to put it. I actually like this little picture I've got here, with Tom Hanks from Castaway, and he's sort of scribbling on a rock, and he's been stuck on an island for many, many, many months to, maybe years at that point. But look, I really think that this is a serious time in our industry, and certainly for owners and sponsors, this is the time to be very focused on and being good at your game and your craft. But I also think if you go to the next slide, this is a message of hope. Um, I think that there's a lot of positive things that are going to come about as a result of this change in the economic conditions. And really, I think that we all have an opportunity as successful operators to really thrive in 2025 if we actually reimagine our operations and how we are going to market and how we're doing our business. I actually think that we can use this tough time to put ourselves in a position to not only survive to 2025, but actually to in fact thrive in 2025. Braveheart is, obviously one of my personal favorites. Everybody knows the story of Braveheart, but I love this quote where he says, "Every man dies, but not every man lives." So if you really think about it, I think what he's really saying is, hey, don't live in fear, and don't let sort of the walls falling all around you and people talking about, doomsday really kind of take you away from, really looking to thrive with your life and with your properties. And I think there is an opportunity here for the people that listen up and wisen up to actually take this and make it much better than what it is now.
All right. Okay. So what are we touching on today?
Well, I want to give our listeners out there two major tips on what they can do to actually innovate and improve asset management and property management so that they can protect their assets and grow their profits. And so, the two things that I want to talk about today, number one is I want to talk about key performance indicators. And a lot of people actually know about KPIs, but I think we're going to talk a little bit about some things that maybe people haven't really thought about with KPIs and how they relate back to the asset management company, or excuse me, the asset manager and the property management company. The second thing is the productive on-site staff, the concept of sort of, hey, if your property is struggling, 9 times out of 10, if you really look at the real issues, it also comes down to whether you've got the on-site staff that are motivated and they are engaged. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can do to get productive on-site staff. So those are the two things we're going to cover today, two areas where I think there's a lot of room for innovation on the ownership level and also on the property management level.
Yeah, what's crazy is it will be the same management company, but just having a change in the seat. So like the bus driver, change in the seat at the property can change everything.
Yep.
And what's funny is we walk a lot of properties, but we'll walk properties for sale. And you can just tell some property managers, I don't know what the right word is, just the hustle they have and the pride of ownership in the property, like picking up everything. And, we were walking a property just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and literally, like she knew every single tenant by name when we were
Yep.
walking around. And so, the question of whether or not she was going to stay on, I think post acquisition, there was no doubt that person was staying, right? Like she had been there 5 years. She loved the place. And so it's a huge, huge thing. So, all right.
Well,
So let's, yeah.
I'm so excited that you told me that story, and we're actually going to talk about the reasons why she's able to know every single resident, because that's a really important thing that you just mentioned. So I'm excited to get to that. In terms of key performance indicators, look, I think the reality is that most every apartment operator, most every asset manager, I think they would all agree that they understand the value of good KPIs, right? They understand the value, but the problem is that there's a huge disconnect between asset management and property management in terms of how the KPIs are built into the execution process. I'm going to repeat that because that's a really important point. If there's nothing else you guys remember, it's that I think that everybody understands what KPIs are, but there's a huge disconnect. And this is the problem. There's a huge disconnect between asset management and property management in terms of how the KPIs are built into the execution process. So meaning you can have all the greatest KPIs in the world as an asset manager, but if you and your property management company are not completely aligned in terms of how they're integrated into everything you're doing, including how you're communicating to the on-site staff, then the only people that know about the KPIs become the asset managers. We actually need to have a process where from the very on-site staff all the way up to the asset managers, in between the executive teams at the management company and at the ownership company, that everybody is aligned in terms of what the KPIs are. That's where we really start to see a lot of value in KPIs.
All right. So I think you touched on this, but
yeah, I think that, look, there's a great quote from Stephen Covey, and I love this quote. And I think a lot of people will think about this and go, yeah, that's a light bulb moment, right? So start with the end in mind. So I think, great operators always define a clear mission up front. And then they work backwards to create the KPIs to track to that mission. And then they share the progress across all levels. And really, if you think about it, this isn't just great apartment operators. This is actually great business people, right? Great business people are able to take a set of people and unite them around a common mission, right? And that common mission is always clearly defined. It's not fuzzy. It's not feel good. It's a set of clear economic objectives that the team has to accomplish. And then all that this operator will do is say, okay, now that we know the mission, right? We're going to get to, 95% occupancy. We're going to get to an average rent of, $1,500 per unit. And we're going to get to, lease 10 units per month. Okay, that's the mission. Now we're going to go ahead and create KPIs. We're going to track that mission every week, and we're going to talk to the on-site staff and the property management company and the asset team, and we're all going to understand, hey, are we hitting this mission or are we not? And if we're not hitting this mission, where do we need to adjust our strategy to hit that mission and get back on track? And so really that's the key, is define your mission and then use the KPIs to keep everybody in the loop in terms of whether we're hitting the metrics or not.
All right. I don't know what slide is next, but we got to get into what KPIs people should be tracking.
Yeah. So go for it. Simple thing you can do, define the economic objectives, create the KPIs, and share the KPIs. Go to the next slide and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
First of all, before we get to some of the examples of KPIs, I think that you as an asset manager or as an operator, you want to spend some time with your management company understanding how you can pull the KPIs right out of the software program. For example, we use a software called Appfolio. Appfolio has APIs that will allow us to actually plug right into an Excel formula, download a bunch of charts from Appfolio, and actually turn those into usable bar charts, which we've already created. So if you are out there and you're working with a property management company, talk to them about the ways that they've incorporated KPIs into the property management software so that you can start to pull real-time data and turn that into something that's usable and visually you can send across the boards to all of your people, right? So that's a big deal. And that's something that we spend a lot of time in our company doing. This is a huge value for everybody that's coming to work with us and all the owners that are working with our management company.
So is this something you're sending weekly or monthly to the owners?
Yeah, this is something we send once a week to the owners, and it's a set of KPI charts, and they're very simple, and they're green and they're red, and they tell you exactly whether we're hitting the performance to budget, right? And that's important. All these KPIs, you want to have, you spend your time putting together a budget at the beginning of the year, right? Every property has an operating budget. So these KPIs, they actually have to tell you if you're hitting your property performance budget or not. The KPIs need to say, hey, look, we're tracking to the income at this property for this year. We're tracking to the expenses. We're tracking to the NOI. We're tracking to the occupancy at this property. So, you want these KPIs to relate back to the budget, because you want it to tell you, hey, are we hitting our budget? Or are we not? Right.
All right. So,
Some
are
of
these
my
sample KPIs?
some of my favorite KPIs.
Okay.
The first
Here
one
we
is
go.
a month-to-date income plus delinquency to budget. So basically, we all know what a month-to-date income to budget chart would look like, right? So like if I've got $100,000 of monthly revenue that I'm trying to hit at the property, and I'm at 90,000 on the 15th of the month, that means I'm at 90% of my budget.
Okay.
Alternatively, if I'm at 110,000, I'm at 110% of my budget. So that's pretty simple, right? But it's not always that simple. What I like to do is I like to add the delinquency, the 0 to 30 delinquency, in addition to what's already been collected. Because just to give you a simple example, let's say that the budget is 100,000. Let's say that I've collected 90,000, but let's say that I still got another 20,000 in delinquency for the month. 0 to 30, again, not aging past 30, but 0 to 30, I've got another 20,000 that I can still collect. Well, that means even if I only collect half of my delinquency, which is $10,000, I hit my budget. So it's really good to look at this slide because I can automatically see at any given point in the month, most of my properties are either going to be on track to hit my budget if I collect delinquency, or maybe there's one that won't. For example, let's say that I've collected $90,000 at a property. Let's say that I only have $5,000 in delinquency left to collect, but my target is 100,000. Well, even if I collect 100% of my delinquency, that gets me to 95,000. I'm going to be 5% short for my budget for that month. I want to know that because now I know that there's an issue with the revenue side of the property. Now I can start to work backwards and say, okay, how can I start to fix this going forward? Because we're falling behind the curve. So I think don't just look at what you've collected to date. Look at what you've collected to date plus your delinquency and look at it as a function of what your target for that month is in terms of revenue. That's going to give you a huge leg up in terms of how you're really doing at the property.
So you're comparing that to budget though, right?
You're absolutely comparing it to budget. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Do people I guess what's funny is like people set a budget when let's say for 2023, you set a budget maybe November or December, and now you're setting the
Yes,
budget for the rest of the year, right? And that's
that's
sort of
right.
the game plan. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Let's
But
jump in. Yeah.
typically on the budget side, most people, what I've seen is that maybe they don't, really pay attention to it as much as they should. So my encouragement to all of the asset managers out there is treat that budget process with your management company like the Bible. That becomes your source of truth. And if you have questions about it in November, December, make sure that you get with your management company and straighten it out. Don't just let the clock hit to January and sort of leave some of the questions around the budget still unanswered, because now you're tracking to something that is not the complete source of truth, and you do not want that to happen.
Right. Okay. All right. So month to date income plus delinquency 0 to 30. And
Yeah.
then, all right, let's jump into the second one, operating expenses to budget. Month to
Yeah,
date,
that's a
month to
pretty,
date.
that's a pretty
Yeah.
simple one, right? The simple one is, hey, are we hitting our numbers for expenses or are we not to the budget, right? And I look at it from a month to date level and a year to date level because, month to date, you're going to have some sort of variances. Some, 1 month you may have a little bit more unexpected expenses. In the next month, you may have a little bit less. But as you start to look at the year to date, that starts to average out. And then you should really be focused on whether your year to date expenses are hitting their numbers or not.
Do you only focus on controllable expenses there?
No, we look at all of the expenses out the door. We
Okay.
look at controllable and non-controllable expenses.
Okay. All right. All right. Third one, current versus projected occupancy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a real simple one, right? So when we look at current occupancy, I think that's obviously, how many people are in the property, right? How many butts in the seats, but projected would be after you factor for notice to vacates, and then for units that are already leased out, pre-leased, and you factor for, any evictions and whatnot. So now you're going to be looking at your projected occupancy out over time. So, obviously if you're 100% occupied now, but your projected occupancy is, 80%, that's a huge deal, right? You're good right now, but the wheels are about to fall off the cart. And if you're not really paying attention to those projected occupancies, you're going to be thinking that everything's a-okay, and then you're going to hit a cliff. You're going to go over a cliff, and you're going to be going, what happened, right?
So is the projected occupancy based off of the next 60 days leased or notice to vacate, or how do you get that projected occupancy?
We take a worst case projection and we look at infinity. So like if I've got somebody who's given a notice to vacate out in 60 days or 90 days,
Right.
it's going to factor that as one less person at the property. If
Okay.
I've got a pre-lease that's out 90 days from there, it's going to factor that as, one person more that's going to be going into the property. So, you can look at it from a 30-day perspective, and a 60-day perspective, a 90-day perspective. I like to look at a worst case because that really tells me how bad or how good things are going to be, and then we can work backwards from there. One of the issues is if you look at like a 30-day, number, what if you've got a whole bunch of notice to vacates in 90 days, and you're looking out 30 days and you're going, hey, we're great. We're going to be at a 98% occupancy 30 days, but you didn't realize that in 90 days you're going to go from 98 to 80.
Do you guys, I know you said you use AppFolio. Do
Yeah.
you use the sort of automated pricing, or like the magic box pricing?
We
I don't know what it's
yeah,
called.
revenue management.
Revenue management. That's the
Yeah.
nice way of putting it. All
Yeah.
right, there you go. Yeah.
We don't use revenue management.
Okay.
We actually set our rents and we keep track of them as we go.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Let's hit this last one. Anybody who's on, if you have any other KPIs, I don't know if you have other KPIs, JC, but I want to give people a chance to chime in with any other KPIs that they track.
These are some of our favorites, but we have obviously we have others, but I wanted to kind of highlight a few that we really, really like.
All right, let's hit this last one.
This is one that doesn't get enough airtime, actually. So I call this aging work orders. This aging work orders chart tells you how many work orders total you have per property, but also how many are aging 5 days plus. So the 5 days plus aging work orders are in yellow, and the under 5 days aging are in gray. So let's just say that you have 10 work orders at a property and 5 of them have been open for more than 5 days. Well, you want to know about that because I guarantee you that those 5 open work orders more than 5 days, that is where you're going to have upset residents who are going to be thinking about not renewing their lease the next time that their renewal comes up. A lot of people are going to be tracking financial KPIs to make sure that as owners that their numbers are being hit. But are you really tracking the one metric that's going to tell you how happy your residents are, which is, hey, am I getting my work orders taken care of as quickly as possible? Or do I have a bunch of open work orders that are not being fixed? You're going to have a bunch of upset residents, and you're going to have a revolving door of turnover down the street, down the road, because of these issues that you're having with your work orders. So I always stress that people have KPIs that tell them exactly how we're doing with work orders, right?
Okay. So I'm thinking, all right, so you got your revenue side covered, your expenses, you got sort of future looking stuff, you got your work orders. Lisa said, I don't know if you track this, maybe skips or maybe leasing traffic coming in. I'm not sure what that message means, but
yeah, I mean, I would imagine that
she
means like skips, skips that people are just skipping out. They're basically it's becoming a vacant unit, and maybe they don't even know about it. So, look, for skips, I mean, if somebody has walked out of your property, if they've left overnight, there's, you've got to be walking your property, and that's where your on-site staff are coming into play. If your on-site staff are not walking the property and going and checking on those units, especially the ones that have delinquency, there's a good chance that they're going to think that the person's still there for maybe a week or two more than what they have already are. Maybe they already skipped out, right? You want to know that. So I think checking on the skipping is really important. That's a physical process, I would think.
All right. I'm going to ask my own question here. When a asset manager goes to a property, what are the 3 things that they should be doing?
Well, the first thing that they should do is they should drive the property and see what the property looks like.
Okay.
Is there a bunch of trash everywhere? Are the maintenance guys out walking around doing their thing? Is there any suspect people that are hanging out at the property? Is the gate working? Is it functioning? So, just imagine yourself as a prospective renter and you're pulling up to your property. If there's trash everywhere, you as a prospective renter are going to be turned off by it. You're probably going to want to go find a different place. So, the biggest thing you need to do is actually just walk your property. The second thing that you should be doing is you should be actually going into the office, and you should be observing what the team is doing. Is the team actually there? Let's start with that. Are they in the office?
Is the door open?
Is the door open? You know, do they have like a we'll be back at 12:15 and it's like 2:30 and they're not there, right? So you know, so the second thing is just go in there and see what's going on with the on-site staff, right? Observe, and also not just observe the staff, but see what the environment is like. Is there, you know, is the phone ringing off the hook? Or is it like a nice kind of quiet, you know, environment? Is there a bunch of angry residents that are inside, you know, talking to the management team about why they're not happy or what's going on there? So number two is observe the staff. And then I think the third thing that you want to do really is I think you want to, and this one you got to be careful, people. Like I don't know how to say this without being the right way, but you kind of want to observe the residents. Okay, what I do not mean is
Okay,
I don't mean going and knocking on a door and knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, Mr. Resident, let me talk to you about, you know, how you're feeling here because I'm the owner of the property." I do not recommend that. But what I do mean by that is go and see what residents are outside, right? If there's a resident walking around, are they going to the laundry office, to the laundry center? Are they getting their laundry done? How do they look like they feel about the laundry? Are there people outside that are talking with each other? Are they feeling good? Or alternatively, do the residents look like they're very nervous or not very happy, right? Observe how the residents are behaving. I think that that's a really hard thing to do because you don't want to cross the line over like, you know, kind of getting involved with the residents on a day-to-day basis, but you want to see how they're feeling, right? Because if the residents look like they're happy and things are going well, you can rest assured that that's going to bode very well for your financials. Alternatively, if you see residents that are upset, residents that are unhappy, if they're walking into the leasing office to go give the manager a heads up that they're super unhappy, that's something that you should be very concerned about.
Sean Griffith says, "Go hang out at the pool or the laundry room."
I love it.
Get a feel. But so I always one of the things that I can't remember who said this and it came up because I just told people to go walk every vacant unit when they go every week or every month. And the couple things that I thought you could get out of that was, one, you could see the progress, right? So you could see what units, what needed to be made ready, quote unquote. And then if something was literally sitting there for 90 days, there could still be something, who knows what's in there. But then also we had a property, I think we did like a loan assumption on it, and the new owners came in and they automatically found they got like 10,000 more a month. And the occupancy was the same and they didn't understand. And what was happening was the owners were out of California, nothing against people in California, but they never walked the property. And so the property manager was collecting money for units that looked vacant.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Collecting cash.
Collecting cash. Yeah, they were collecting cash for these units, but then on the rent roll, they were vacant, quote unquote. Yep. And so, that's that will happen. I mean, I love your idea, James. I think walking the vacants is definitely a must do. So that's a great thing. Yeah. Lisa's saying, ask for lists of vacants, pick 2, see them, see how difficult, show ready set. And then
love that. Yeah.
Let's see, Sean. All right. You're just on the phone checking the security cameras. Touch on security cameras, JC, because sometimes, I want security cameras like everywhere, but some people feel like it's a little bit like when I drive into the property, you got a big sign that said, you are being recorded. Like, it's like when you're walking in the Target and there's a video camera on you and they show you the screen of you walking in just to make sure that that we're watching you. So what's your take on security?
I'm a huge fan of security cameras. In fact, if you've got the choice between putting in security cameras or paying a monitored service like a patrol service to come to your property, I will tell you, put security cameras, but here's the catch. There's some companies out there who we work with, for example, and they do actually human monitored surveillance of the cameras
Okay.
in the nighttime, and they'll charge you a certain amount of money per month, and they will actually physically watch those cameras. And actually, you can take it a step further. You can get security cameras that actually have speakerphones, speakers connected to them, so that these people that are watching the cameras can literally click a button from their office, and they can actually say something to a potential threat that is snooping around at your property, like, "Hey, just to let you know, we see that you're there. We've already alerted the Dallas Police Department, and they are on their way." And so, you'll literally see like a guy look up at and like looking around, and he just takes off because he's like shocked that not only are there security cameras, but there's somebody speaking to him from the cameras. So, cameras are awesome. Get as many of them as you can, and get a surveillance monitoring company, and get your cameras, some of the cameras in very specific locations, to have an audio component so that you can speak into the cameras. And that is going to do way more than having a patrol service.
Yeah, it's almost like an intercom at the Ring doorbell. I mean, have you found on your properties, or are you putting Ring on all these properties on the front door, or is what's your feel on that? Is that more just like a value add piece, an upgrade for the unit?
I think rather than a Ring
Yeah.
doorbell, because what I've seen happen is, because when you put a Ring doorbell, you're basically telling a prospect or a resident, "Hey, you're going to get immediate service." But what I've seen with these Ring doorbells is you press the doorbell button and nobody gets back to you. So it's almost more frustrating for a prospect, because they think they're going to get immediate service and they don't hear back from somebody. I think the better thing to do is put a QR code in your window of your leasing office. And
Mm.
so if the leasing office is locked and you can't walk in, have a QR code with a little sign up on top that says, you know, schedule a property tour. And so they scan that QR code, and it could take them right to, dial a phone number, and they hit that call button, and then they schedule a tour right then and there. Or, if it's like, put another QR code with the work order, file a work order, have another QR code. And if they scan that QR code and they're an existing resident, they immediately get connected to the if you have a maintenance call center, which we do, they get forwarded to the maintenance call center, and they don't have to worry about somebody being at the office. They can just talk to the agent and submit a work order right then and there. So, I personally don't like the Ring cameras because I think they set false expectations. I think I'd rather have self-service QR codes there instead.
Okay. I was talking about on the tenant's door, but your
Oh,
answer was even better.
yeah.
So I like that. I like that. All right, let's keep moving. All right, number two. So we covered KPIs. Um, Now let's get into, and we touched a little bit on this, on making sure that your on-site staff. So a lot of these properties, they maybe have, let's say, a 200 unit deal, 2 in, 2 out. So 2
Yep.
inside, 2 outside.
Yep.
What should they be focused on, and then what should they not be focused on in terms of staffing?
Well, the biggest thing I can tell you is that, I think anybody that's been in this business long enough will know that the best business plan that an operator can come up with will fail without great on-site staff. Your on-site staff is either going to make or break your property, no matter how good you have your business plan is, right? So here's the problem. I can tell you right now that almost every other management company out there, they're asking their staff to do a whole bunch of back office work that they should not be doing. And it is creating a hugely stressful environment for your on-site staff. They're wasting time. They're very frustrated. And that is putting your investment at risk. The biggest thing that we as operators and management companies need to understand is that it's really easy to blame the on-site staff for the misperformance of the property, but it's a lot harder to actually look at yourself in the mirror and go, how am I contributing to these problems that these on-site staff are talking about, right? So, like, are you actually talking to your on-site staff about what their day-to-day lives are like, right? I mean, just imagine, James, you're in an office and you're at a 200 unit property. Can you imagine how many people are calling each day just to figure out if they want to lease a unit at your property? So your phone is ringing off the hook nonstop. In the meantime, you've got residents walking in to talk about work orders. You've got a bunch of mail that's coming in and they've got to enter invoices or bills into the system. I mean, the list of back office work that they're doing, it's mind blowing. And really, you're taking them away from focusing on your residents and making sure that their resident experience is great. You're stopping them from walking units, walking vacants, knocking on doors to collect delinquency. These are the sorts of things that are going to add maximum value for your on-site staff, not, punching an invoice into the system, not, entering a work order into the system, not, all these other things that you are expecting your on-site staff to do that are just honestly just a complete waste of time. And anybody can tell you that there's a bunch of automation. And if you think about virtual services and virtual humans, you can take all that stuff off their plate.
All right. So this is, well, what's great. I think I saw a post about like, we have a $20 million asset and we've got 2 people in the office trying to run the entire thing. And I mean, so I am usually walking properties when they are for sale. And when I walk these properties for sale, the leasing person is typically looks exactly like this sort of top right person
Yep.
up here. They're
Yep.
just like, how many units we walking today? Or we might be walking all the units that day.
Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, it's pretty painful. And I'm pretty sure tenants, when they come into the office, they typically are not there for like 1 minute. They're usually there for like 45 minutes on one issue.
Yeah.
So that's already like, 1/8 of their day is dealing with one resident. So yeah, a lot.
And then, James, can you imagine like after all that, right? It only takes maybe 4 or 5 residents to come in and your whole day is burned, right?
Yeah.
And after all that, you still have to put all your invoices into the system. You've got to call back all the leasing prospects that called and left a voicemail. You've got to, enter all the work orders that you wrote on a Post-it note because you were busy talking to 17 other people. How many of those Post-it notes you think you're going to get to before you got to go home, right? And you get home you leave your office at, 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and you're dreading the next day because the whole thing is going to happen again. I mean, I don't think people really fully appreciate what these on-site staff, what we're putting them through with all these back office, things that we have them do. It is completely burning them out. And that's why people are quitting. People are quitting because they don't want that lifestyle. It's not for them. And, you put the pandemic on top of that, man, that's like a recipe for people just saying, look, goodbye. I don't want to be a manager for you anymore. So we have to look at ourselves and say, how can we make that better for our staff? How can we show them that we really care about them, right? Not just by saying we want happy people, but by actually putting the systems and the processes in place that actually make their lives better and understanding how we can take that work off their plate.
All right. Lisa is saying preach on, JC, preach on.
I'm very passionate about my on-site staff because I've learned the hard way, by the way.
They're supposed to do that all with a smile.
Hey,
right?
What's up, Grady? Hey, I love your posts on Grady. I follow you on LinkedIn. We got to connect on LinkedIn, but man, you got some great posting, buddy. I'm a fan of your stuff. That's for sure.
All right. Let's keep going. All right. So we've got to get some of the work off of their back so they can take care of the clients being the tenants. All right, so let's get into how do we do this now?
There's three simple things that you can do to get happier and more productive on-site staff. Okay, number one is remove back office work with two things that I call centralization and specialization. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, but what I mean by centralization is at Velo Residential, for example, we've got a whole army of virtual agents across the globe, and also AI bots that actually take a lot of the back office work off of the on-site staff's plate and centralize it to, for example, we have what we call a leasing agent, a virtual leasing agent. That person does all of the application processing, all of the background screening. They do the verification of employment, all the things that are typically done by a leasing agent on site. We completely take all that work off of the on-site staff's plate, and we centralize that with a bunch of people that are just doing that. You don't need that function to be at the on-site level, right? Your people should be focused on much more important stuff than running a background check. Specialization, I'll give you an example of specialization. We also have virtual agents that are called invoice processing agents. Now, for all of you owner operators, you probably understand that the management company does all of the payables and does all the bookkeeping, but the on-site staff typically will do the invoice entry into the system. Well, I say, why are you having your on-site staff do invoice entry? We actually have specialized agents that are trained in bookkeeping, trained how to properly enter an invoice into the system and properly categorize it, by the way. And so with specialized invoice processing agents, we take all of the work off the on-site staff's plate. The day that our on-site managers start at any one of our properties, you know what we tell them, James? We go, guess what? As long as you ever work at Velo Residential, you will never have to enter a single invoice, ever. They look at us and they go, holy crap, are you serious? We go, yep, that's all done by virtual agents for you. And by the way, we have leasing agents that help you with leasing. We have resident retention agents that help you with work order satisfaction. We have all these virtual agents that help you do all these things we typically expect you to do. Guess what? I'm telling you, James, we kind of screw these agents up for life because they can never leave and go to another management company because they'll have to go back to doing entries of invoices. They'll have to take, leasing calls. They'll have to run application screenings. We have so much less turnover because we are making their lives so much better with things that we're doing to take their office work off of their plate, right?
So this third one, optimizing the org structure. So is that the team, the team on the site?
So what I mean by that is, one of the challenges with centralization, if you really kind of get into like what centralization is, what it means, one of the downsides to centralization is that you can lose connection between teammates. So your team chemistry goes away. So the easiest way to tell you is let's say that I have, 25 invoice processing agents and I don't have any sort of connection with them to the properties. So imagine that all these vendors are sending invoices in. So what happens is they got no connection to the property. So they become like invoice monkeys. Basically, enter invoice, pay invoice, enter invoice, pay invoice. I'm an invoice monkey, right? Well, what happens when you have invoice monkeys is you start double paying bills. You start not caring about the budget. You start actually losing connection to the property. So what we do at our company is not only do we have a centralized approach, but we actually put our virtual people into a thing that we call like pods, PODS, kind of like a pod of whales, right? To where we actually have these pods of virtual teams that are specific to property. So even though we have a centralized approach, we also create pods where each of these pods of virtual teams are specifically associated with a property. So they get to know the manager at the property. They get to know the budget at the property. So all these things are designed to create that virtual team chemistry between the on-site team and the off-site team so that you don't have this situation where you've centralized it so much that we have no connection and no chemistry between the teams so that, all of a sudden now, like I said, we're just paying all kinds of invoices. That's not how we want our setup to be. And so how you're preserving that small team look and feel is just as important as creating the centralized and specialized environment.
Okay. I'm going to ask a math question.
Yes.
Because I'm a finance guy. And all right. So normal deal, let's say 200 units.
Yep.
And I'm going to be generous and say 1,500 a door. So $300,000. Where does the $300,000 go? $300,000 go on the payroll for your optimal staff?
Well, you're typically going to have, if it's a 200 unit property, the traditional setup would be 2 + 2.
Okay.
You have 2 inside and 2 outside. Now, depending on how the property is in terms of condition, or if it's in a restabilization mode, you may actually want to have a 2 + 3, meaning that you may want to have a 2 inside and a 3 outside, right? Because you've got a bunch of extra work that you got to turn. Now, What we do is if the property is completely stabilized, we can run that property with just one on-site person.
Inside the property, inside the unit.
Inside
Inside the leasing office. Okay.
Yeah, inside the property, one person.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have a team of virtual team members that are taking all of this offsite work off back office work off their plate and getting that done for them. So that's at a stabilized property. But if, for example, we're taking over a property and we're going to be completely renovating it and repositioning it, we may want to have a second person at the office for the first 6 months to a year. And then we're going to remove that person once we stabilize the property, right? So the key is that these virtual team members and these AI bots are so effective and so efficient at making the lives of the on-site staff's lives better that we can actually reduce the staff count. Now, it gets even better as we go bigger, right? So if we have a 250 to 300 unit property where you typically have 3 people, we can absolutely reduce that down to 2 people immediately. So now think about it. If you take one full-time person, inside person off the payroll, you're talking about a savings of probably $70,000 fully loaded, drops right out of the payroll bucket, right?
Okay.
Now, in its place, we charge a virtual services center fee, right? Which is typically much less than what it takes for that second person. So we're actually saving the property money on the payroll and giving more efficient and more a better service to the staff and also to the residents.
I'm trying to think of, so as you scale up, it's going to get easier and easier in terms of size.
Definitely. The bigger, the better. And I mean, that's where I think operators have more efficiencies to begin with. And they understand that, right? So if you've got a 100 unit property and a 200 unit property, you can operate the 200 unit property much more efficiently, especially with a centralized approach and a specialized approach.
All right. So here's the AI bots. These are some of the things that they're doing in place of that one person.
That's right. So like if you're out there and you are like, well, okay, what do you mean by the virtual services, JC? Well, this is exactly what I mean. So all of these things on the left-hand side, AI bots to follow up with the prospects, application processing, lease renewals, invoice entry, work order entry, process compliance. All these things are being done by a virtual army of bots and humans, which is traditionally done by the on-site team. And so what you end up having on the right-hand side is you have an office manager that's doing all of the really important stuff like, talking to your prospects, having relationships with them, collecting the delinquency, showing the prospects, showing tours. And then you're having the virtual services team follow up with all of this other back office stuff, right? That is really where you're going to start to see a lot better return for your investment on your on-site staff. And you're going to start to see happier on-site staff as well.
What do you do? So the person I was talking to earlier today, he has 100 units, one property.
Yeah.
Does it still work, or do you need something? Do you need a bigger property, or can you make it work with 100 units?
No, it still works. It still works. It's just not as cost effective. Okay. So like the scales get better as you get bigger with cost effectiveness. But it still works the same way. Look, if you have a 100 unit office, right, and your on-site manager is doing all this stuff that's traditionally done by, the on-site person, they're going to be just as stressed out, right? So when you start to take all this stuff off their plate, they're actually going to get their life back, and they're going to start to become much more focused on the actual resident's experience. So, while you may not have as much cost savings because it's a smaller property, you're certainly going to recognize a much better boost in terms of the experience of the residents and the quality of the on-site staff's lives, right?
All right. That's perfect. Okay. So I'm trying to think. All right. Wrap this guy up a little bit here for us.
Yeah. So, we covered 2 things today, 2 areas, 2 tips on where I believe that we can innovate as asset and property managers to grow our profits at our properties. Number 1 is the key performance indicators. And number 2 is productive on-site staff. So if you go over to the next slide, again, for KPIs, make sure that you define an economic objective. Define your economic objectives using your annual operating budget. Number 2 is create your KPIs that track to the budget. And number 3 is share those KPIs across the organizational levels and host stand-up meetings. By a stand-up meeting, I mean just a quick 15-minute meeting and just show the numbers, right? Either they're green or they're red. If they're green, forget about them. Don't worry about them. If they're red, go dive deep and figure out what's broken. When it comes to sharing these KPIs, different management companies are set up different ways. If you work with Velo, for example, all of this stuff is already built into our process. So you don't actually have to recreate the wheel as an asset manager. With other management companies, you may have to actually recreate the wheel or get them to sort of, do some heavy lifting. But however it's going to happen, you've got to make sure that there's a process in place for this to be done. Otherwise, you're really going to have a lot of people moving in a bunch of different directions, and nobody's going to be moving around a common set of goals, right?
All right. And then wrap up with the staff.
Yeah, 3 things that you can do to get happier and more productive on-site staff. Number 1 is remove back office work with centralization and specialization. Number 2 is use technology to automate repeatable tasks. We use an AI bot for leasing. So anytime a prospect calls in 24/7, night or day, we're getting an immediate text message back to that person. And we're saying, hey, how can we help you with this? Would you like to come see a tour? Would you like some information? And then we're having natural conversations with that AI bot and the prospect. So it's not a human, it's an AI bot. Number 3 is optimize your org structures to preserve the small team look and feel. So don't centralize it so much so that you lose the small team look and feel. Make sure you're doing things to keep the relationships intact between the on-site staff and the virtual staff.
and then we switch it over from survive to thrive.
We're surviving and we're thriving in 2025, James. We're not just surviving, right? Successful operators are going to figure this out. They're going to innovate, and they're going to realize that we are in an operate for profit era. And the flip for equity thing, that's long gone. And I think that people need to understand that how they're going to make money going forward is by being master operators.
All right. And then to learn more about Velo, I guess try to scan that link. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but we can definitely try it.
Yeah, I think it'll work. I can try right now.
So what was funny is when you're talking about on the management side, I had to have a plumber come out to my house, and I was sitting at my kid's tennis match, and the plumber that won, obviously they won on Google. So I just put in, plumber and then the city, state, and then boom, first thing, clicked on it. And then they were like, schedule it right there. So schedule when the person's going to come out. You scheduled it by the day, by the hour. And then this was Saturday at like 9 a.m. I'm just like watching my kid's tennis match. And then like literally 5 minutes later, somebody calls me and says, thanks for scheduling. We will be out there on Tuesday between 8 and 12. See you then. And then the day of, they literally called me and texted me the person that was going to come, a picture of the person that was going to come, and then the reviews for that particular maintenance guy. It was crazy. So, I mean, I think
how did that make you feel as a customer?
I mean, I was amazed just that somebody would this was like $100 or $200 plumbing job. It wasn't like I wasn't putting in a pool that was like $200,000, right? This was just like the sink was leaking and I can't fix it, so I'm going to call someone to fix it. But they had all that set up and in place and ready to go, and the thing's still leaking. But
well, I'll tell you what. Making it easy to do business is, I think, the theme of what you're saying. And if you scan this QR code, when you schedule a consultation, it's completely self-service. You can basically look at a calendar. You can pick your date. You get an automatic calendar coming to your email address with a Zoom link. And so it's completely seamless. You don't have to wait for somebody to call you back. You can actually take immediate action and book a tour or book a consultation. So, and keeping with that theme, James, I'm a big believer in making it easy to do business. So yes, absolutely. It's got to be easy.
Well, JC, any final comments? I think, I do this slide. I'm going to go back to the slide because one question I had for you, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. This piece of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do round 2 And I don't know if you want to share how you do this or how people do this, but so I'm an LP in a lot of deals, and the only thing that I see, and maybe the general partner sees it, maybe not, but the only thing I see is the monthly PDF 150-page report that shows I can read it, but 99% of limited partners, I'm pretty sure, don't read it.
James, I'm gonna blow you away with what I'm about to tell you. So, okay, I've been, as I said, I'm an owner operator. Not only do I have a management company, but owner operator. So, for the last as long as I've been doing this, I put together a simple 10-minute video, a 10-minute presentation that's recorded on Vimeo, Vimeo.com,
Yep.
and it basically just has these little KPI charts that you see here. It's about 10 minutes long, and there's no more than like maybe 5 or 6 charts. And we actually send that out to the investors in each deal. And it tells them exactly how the deal's performing without having to look at 10,000 documents, because nobody's going to do that to begin with. So if you want to understand how we're doing that very efficiently, I could show you something that'll knock your socks off. And it's no more than just basically taking all these KPIs and putting them onto a couple of simple charts. And it says, hey, here's our budget for income. We're hitting it for this quarter. We're hitting it for this quarter. This quarter we fell short. And here's a very simple reason why we fell short. And here's what we're doing to fix it. Second slide. Here's a simple bar chart on our expenses. In Q1, we hit our budget. Q2, we did not hit our budget. Here's what we're doing to fix it in Q2. Slide number 3, here's our net operating income. You see where I'm going, right? It's basically like 4 or 5 bar charts which are KPIs just like this in green and red. We send that out to our investors, and they have no questions about how their deal's doing. None.
Yeah, even I can understand green and red, so that always works.
James, you're just like me. We got to keep it simple, because if it gets over my head, then I start to glaze over and I lose focus.
Well, JC, I appreciate you coming to speak at the speaker series last month, and then you'll be at the big show in October at the conference. So we appreciate you sponsoring the conference as well. And if anybody has any questions, let me go back to the QR code. If anybody has any questions, or you can do the QR code or click on the go to the website and reach out to JC. I appreciate everyone jumping on, and any questions, definitely reach out to JC or myself, and we'll put some of the links down below for any of the stuff that we talked about today. So JC, thanks for coming on, and I will see you next time you're here in Dallas.
Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you.